trying to get straight into Manchester United after another difficult week for André Onana. Now, he has been left out of the squad for today's game at Newcastle following his 2 mistakes against Lyon in midweek. We understand that Ruben Amorim wants him to have a period of rest and clear his head after a tough time both on and off the pitch. Right decision, Darren?
I can't make up my mind. I mean, listen, every Man United fan who saw Thursday's game will look at him and say absolutely the right decision. All players want to play. And you would imagine the best way for him to get out of this bad run of form is to play again. Now, today's game, every game is important when you're a Manchester United footballer and when you support Manchester United, but in the context of their season, it's not going to make that much of a material difference as to their domestic campaign. But ahead of the second leg of their European tie, dropping him is a big step. Now, will he be brought back for that game? Is he resting him so that he can bring him back, or will it be longer than that? That's the big question. And all of these headlines in all of the papers today suggest that there is certainly doubt about his long-term future. Just on the right side behind Darmesh here, you might be able to see there's a bit of a difference of opinion, because that headline there, the second one, just by his elbow there, drop Onana, no, give him a chance. That's Andy Dunn in the Sunday Mirror. Whereas that one underneath that headline, Axe might help Onana, he's a liability for United. That's Danny Murphy in the Mail on Sunday. So there is a split of opinion in the Sunday papers, even though there is unanimity on social media from fans who've seen him play. To be fair, a lot of fans with that emotional investment in United and their results, whereas these two are quite objective opinions from the outside.
Whatever happens, though, it's adding scrutiny to a position where Manchester United really don't want there to be any scrutiny, because now he's dropped for today's game. What happens on Thursday? Does he come back in? How much pressure is now on Altay Bayındır? If he has a really good game or a bad game or an indifferent game, what happens on Thursday? All eyes will suddenly be on the goalkeeping position ahead of this game.
The second thing you said is key. If Bayındır comes in and has a bad game, what then?
Exactly. Does he just come back in? I suppose the noises we're hearing is he could easily come back in for Thursday's game. So they're actually making that known almost, that, you know, Onana has been dropped, but it's for a couple of reasons, as you mentioned before. It's for performances on the pitch, but some issues off the pitch as well.
Look, there has been this characterisation of him as a bad keeper, right? He's played for Barcelona, he's played for Ajax, he's played for Inter Milan. He helped Inter Milan to the Champions League final. You don't do that if you're a bad keeper. I think he's having a bad season, absolutely right. I think he's lost his confidence. There have been moments where he's saved Manchester United previously. I remember games against some of the biggest teams in the Premier League where he's really been impressive. But there's no doubt about the fact that his confidence has drained away. And in the most recent games, he's been poor. He would accept that.
Doesn't help with, you know, a fellow pro, Nemanja Matic, coming out and basically, you know, labelling him as the worst goalkeeper. I mean, did that surprise you? I mean, it was like, did he break a code?
I'll be honest with you,
Matic?
and I'll tell you what I said a couple of pounds in the WhatsApp group. I thought Matic was disrespectful. I think he escalated it to a level where he didn't need to. I think Onana was talking in general terms, as a player would. We think we're better than them.
Yeah.
You know, it's very sporting and competitive, but not too disrespectful. Riyad Al-Samurai in the Mail on Sunday says, hang on a minute, when Matic was at Man United, only one of his 5 seasons at the club was decent. The rest, it was a pale imitation of the greats. So let's not kid ourselves about how good he thinks he was. Now, it is the case that maybe Onana possibly shouldn't have engaged it and taken it any further, but, you know, we're all human. You know, somebody says something about one of us, you feel that instinctive urge to respond. But I just felt that Matic made it unnecessarily disrespectful, and I certainly didn't like that from a personal point of view and from a journalistic point of view as well. Listen, I always say to you on this show, we are in the information business. So I'm never going to say that players, managers, fans, anybody shouldn't speak. But I just think that Matic spoke about Onana in a way that I don't think he would speak about other players.
It was very individual and very personalised, wasn't it, really?
I mean, he was asked the question because Onana had said that Manchester United on paper are better than Lyon.
But that doesn't justify him going to that level.
I get that. Matic did say statistically he's one of the... I know. It's not the best thing to say. It did sound very disrespectful, but look what happened off the back of it. Because Matic suddenly will probably think, I've got into his head. And
very much so.
Look at the mistakes he made in that game.
And now he's been
rightly or wrongly. Of course, I get your point. But do you think Matic is sitting there thinking, oh, I wish I hadn't done that after what happened on that night?
No. Listen, I don't think he'll care one iota as to where Onana is and the impact that it's had on him. I just think in general terms, for Matic to speak that way about a fellow professional, we don't see it very often. And I just felt he was unnecessarily disrespectful.
Paul Scholes said that Onana initially should have kept his mouth shut, but that was one of those situations where he was asked the question, and he's clearly going to back his own club to say, yeah, we believe we're better.
Yeah.
But maybe there's another way to answer that question, and maybe not say it in such black and white terms as we're better. Oh, trot out that line, all games in Europe are difficult, they're a tough opponent. You don't need to go into that, we're better than the other team.
It kind of strikes me that Matic might have targeted Onana, regardless of what he'd said. It felt like something that he just wanted
Unfortunately,
to say.
when he's having a bad game, it goes almost from bad to worse with him. In the past, when we've watched him have a bad game, it's it just gets worse and worse. So you can see that he's one of those players that kind of does need that confidence boost, and this is exactly what he hasn't got this time.
Yeah, and listen, there have been games, certainly when he initially arrived, where he'd made mistakes and he fronted up. He was not short of the confidence to come forward and say, yeah, I made that mistake, but I'm going to stand up to be counted. He didn't hide. And there is no doubt, I'm not sitting here saying that he's had a good season or even trying to defend the mistakes and whatever else. I just felt that I just didn't like the discourse. As soon as I saw it, I didn't think, oh my goodness, isn't that funny? Or as they say, savage or whatever. I just felt it was a disrespectful way to speak about another fellow professional. And we don't often see that discourse plummet to that level. And I just don't, it's a personal thing, I suppose, but I just don't like to see.
And you wonder whether he's had those conversations. I'm going to say we don't know whether he's had those conversations with Amorim this week, but the fact that he's been dropped as well, I wonder what that does for him right now as well. The fact that everyone's going to be talking about him being dropped. Look, away from Onana, the papers are going quite heavy in today about the fact that there's going to be a pretty big summer clear-out.
Yeah, I want to point you to that one up there, £200 million fire sale. We can have it on the screen. It's in the Sun on Sunday, although it's among a number of players. The headline is Sold Trafford, and they are the players who could well be going. And you can look at the subdeck in Phil Thomas's piece. I've picked that out because it's got a graphic of all of the players that they suggest could be sold off to raise that amount of money for Amorim to bring new players into the club. Now, bear in mind, Amorim's made it clear, he was speaking to Melissa Reddy last week, wasn't he, that he's not going to spend the money on big-name players. It's going to be players who can fit into his system. But these are the players who could be sacrificed as a result. Of course, Onana's among them, Antony's there, Marcus Rashford's there, Garnacho is there, Toro Malacia is in there as well. A number of players who could go so that they can get the money to bring the players in to back their manager. I said last week, it is a fallacy to say that United do not back their managers. They do. Even when everyone outside feels, actually, it's not quite the right thing to do, as they did with Ten Hag. But they give their managers the money to spend, and that's what they want to do. And Jim Ratcliffe said the same, didn't he, to Gary Neville. We want to back our manager in the